It says that it's compressed. Why can I hear my voice?
You sometimes you have to close out Blackstorm for it to upload into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can't
That
wait
might
until
refresh Jody's memory.
Doubters get shut down and they beat the Raptors.
You think they will?
And then lose to the Bucks.
Yeah. No, I don't think they're losing to the Bucks. I think they're a better matchup.
One of the
than
two.
Bucks.
They're losing to one of the two.
Yeah, they're gonna lose to one
If
of
they
them.
lost to anybody, it would be the Raptors. I think they're better than the Bucks. The Raptors give them difficulty. I should say no. I shouldn't say they're better. I should say they match up better.
Did they comprehend what I was saying?
I think the key to the Raptors series is Ben Simmons.
Last night's game
They
was
tried it?
funny. Last night's game.
I know.
It was so funny.
We tried
We like turned the TV on. They were playing
There's,
trash because they were up like
And then there
31.
was
Studio 2
reactions
drop
at
is
the end. I was
connected.
like, all right.
Like the other day when Butler got kicked.
Love that.
Yes.
Nets.
Like it's going through media encoder fine. It's just not picking up.
Because like we were trying up there and it like says it encodes, it's finished encoding, but then
Yeah.
when you go to do it in like Blackstorm, the media import, it says it's
Hey,
failed.
this is annoying me.
You closed out of Blackstorm and then did the media import.
Oh god.
They can hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I guess one of your mics are on.
Well, it's good that they were live. The NFL Draft is a game changer on all accounts. It can shape the future of a franchise. It can create storylines for a city in desperate need of one. Or most importantly, it can change the life of young men who have worked their whole lives to reach stardom. Naturally, we're going to talk about it all right here on this Rowan Television Network special broadcast. The NFL Draft is a game changer on all accounts. It can shape the future of a franchise. It can create storylines for a city in desperate need of one. Or most importantly, it can change the life of young men who have worked their whole lives to reach stardom. Naturally, we're going to talk about it all right here on this Rowan Television Network special broadcast. Hello everyone and welcome to the Draft 2019. I'm your host Derek Hill, ready to take you along the ride for this in-depth analysis of most, if not all, of the 2019 NFL Draft class. Joining me today are some of my recognizable cohorts from the year at RTN, including Jason Pini, Rebecca Sulzbach, and Kayla Santiago. How are you guys all doing today?
Great. Good. How are you?
Yeah, this might be the first time we're all on a broadcast together, which is pretty neat, huh?
Yeah, pretty cool.
You guys looking forward to the draft tomorrow night?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
so excited.
Yeah, yeah.
Pumped.
All right, well, let's not waste any time. We'll get right into it. Let's start out talking about the top 5 picks in the draft. Of course, the Cardinals last year, they struggled, had a terrible record. They have the number 1 overall pick. So, Jason, we'll start with you, and then we'll go around. Who do you think they take number 1?
Well, to me, the answer is pretty obvious. I think Quinnen Williams is the best player in the draft. Many people think that they're going to take Kyler Murray because they're in a really weird quarterback situation with Josh Rosen not performing how they wanted him to. But Quinnen Williams is just sort of this monster at the D tackle position, and he could be a real game changer on defense for them. You know, it reminded people a lot of Aaron Donald, and while he may not be that good, he's definitely going to be an all-star caliber player.
So I think Quinnen Williams is a great player. I see him going down a little bit lower in the draft. I'm going to take Kyler Murray. I'm going to go with the majority of people. I just think they need a quarterback, especially with everything with Josh Rosen going on. So I do think they're going to take Kyler number 1.
So I'm agreeing with both of you in a sense. I don't want them to take Kyler, but I think they're going to take Kyler. I think people were thinking that Josh Rosen will go to the Redskins. I don't think the Redskins need Josh Rosen. I think he'll stay in Arizona. I think Quinnen Williams would be the better option for them, but I think they will end up taking Kyler Murray and make a mistake with that. I mean, he won't be a mistake, but I think his talent will be kind of lost there for a little bit.
Man, it looks like I'm going to be the only one with a different answer there. I'm going with Nick Bosa from Ohio State.
Wow.
I mean, that's my team, and I feel like you can't pass up on a guy who only had 10 games played and 17.5 career sacks, plus he has family ties to the NFL,
Yeah,
with
of
Bosa
course.
being on the Chargers also. So we move on to the second pick with the 49ers. You mentioned Quinnen Williams
Yeah.
going number 1. I think he's going to go number 2 to the 49ers. They really have everything ironed out other than injuries last year. And how do you pass up on a defensive tackle? Big guy from Alabama.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody from Alabama is already NFL ready before they even
Absolutely.
sign
Yeah.
on to
Yeah.
Alabama,
Absolutely.
honestly. But what do you guys think?
Well, it seems we're flip-flop here, Derek, because I have Nick Bosa going number
Yeah.
2 to the 49ers. I'm sure a lot of people do, because in my opinion, he's the best player in the draft. But even though I put Quinnen Williams first, just because of fit, he's going to be a monster. He's probably going to be instantly one of the best edge rushers when it comes to the run game when he comes in the league. And pass game he can work on, and he's just an animal. He's going to be better than his brother Joey Bosa. That might be a hot take. but
I agree with
agree.
you, honestly.
Yeah.
He's going to be phenomenal.
I actually also have Nick Bosa going to the 49ers, and with Quinnen Williams, like we were talking about, I actually have him going at 7 to the Jags.
Oh, that's
So
kind of
that's-
yeah.
Yeah.
If I could be confident about one pick in this entire draft, it's Nick Bosa going to the 49ers.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely where he'll be. I think that's the best fit for him. And I have Quinnen Williams going at 3 or 4 to the Jets or the Raiders. It's just who picks who. But I definitely see Bosa at 49ers.
And then rolling along with defense in these first couple of picks, the Jets come up at number 3. It seems like they're finally starting to get their offense going, especially after Darnold started getting on a roll last year. So really what they need help at is defense. And when do the Jets not pass up on a linebacker? It seems that them and the Cowboys, they're always stacking up on linebackers, no matter what season
Absolutely.
it is. So I have him taking Josh Allen, the outside linebacker from Kentucky, 31 and a half sacks in his career. And I don't see how the Jets pass up on that at 3.
Oh yeah, I also have Josh Allen going at 3. He's just one of the better linebackers in this class. He can play the edge, although he's most likely going to play linebacker in the NFL. And everything you said is 100% right. The Jets never pass up on a linebacker.
I actually have them taking Devin White, the linebacker from LSU. Like you said, I do think that they need a linebacker in that position, and in my opinion, I think Devin White fits a little bit more with the Jets caliber. So
I have the Jets taking Ed Oliver. And I think that they could also take Quinnen Williams. So if they don't take Quinnen Williams, the Raiders are going to take him. And I have Josh Allen going 6 for the Giants, which I don't think is what they need, but I think is what may happen.
All right, so moving on, the Raiders are picking 4th. A lot of people think they're going to take a quarterback because of problems between Derek Carr and Gruden. But personally, I think they need the most help on defense. It seems no matter who they sign every year, their defense is just absolutely terrible. So after missing out on Josh Allen to the Jets, I say they take Devin White, who, Kayla, you mentioned him going to the Jets, but I have him falling here because he's just a great pass rusher as well as a cover defender, and I feel like that's exactly what the Raiders need.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I think they're going to take a quarterback. I think they're going to take Kyler Murray if he does not go to the Cardinals, because John Gruden definitely does not like Derek Carr for unknown reasons, but the rest of the management does. But with the amount of money they're giving John Gruden, I think they might be a little more lenient on what he wants, and then try to maybe move on from Derek Carr and keep them both to see what they're going to do.
I have Ed Oliver actually going 4 just because I had Devin White going 3, and like I think you were saying, I have Josh Allen going 6 to the Giants as well. So that's how I have those guys lined up. I think all these teams actually need a lot of defensive help, so it's just going to be which player fits them best.
I think, talking about the Raiders, that I would say Quinnen Williams if he doesn't go to a team before that, like if he doesn't go to the Jets. But if they were going to take the quarterback route and Arizona wasn't going to take Kyler, then I would have them taking Kyler as a quarterback. I don't think that's what they need to do. I think they could wait until 2nd or 3rd round and take a quarterback. But how can you pass up Kyler Murray if he's still an option? You can't pass him up if he's down. If he's already hasn't been picked at 5th, you can't pass him up.
That's why, speaking of Kyler Murray, the Buccaneers pick at 5. I think this is a really tough pick for me. I had to pick 2 people for this because I honestly don't know who the
picked a lot
Bucs
of
could take.
doubles.
Because I think if Kyler Murray falls there, and the Buccaneers seem like they don't have faith in their quarterback position no matter who they put out there. There was Fitzpatrick and Winston back and forth all last year. I feel like Murray is a guy that they would be able to elevate their offense with. But at the same time, they had defensive problems last year. So linebacker Devin Bush, he would be able to give them all the help they need, honestly. The linebacker runs the field. Just the Buccaneers, they have tough options here. So I'm interested to see what you guys think.
Yeah, I think they're going to take defense as well. I'd say Devin White, though, because I don't have him going so far yet. The Buccaneers have no problems playing rookies on defense their first year. We saw that last year. They had 3, 4, 5 guys that would be in their main rotation on defense. And I think the linebacker position is one of the places they need to improve on. I think Devin White's the second best linebacker. So there you have it.
I kind of am with you. I have Kyler Murray if he doesn't go to Arizona, going to Tampa Bay. They've had a lot of quarterback problems with Winston and Fitzmagic, and they did lose Deshaun Jackson, so they're really going to need somebody in there that can really make plays on other receivers. So I can see that happening.
I'm gonna go Devin White. I agree with you how you were saying there's so many different options they can go with, but I do have Devin White going for them. I think that is a safe option for them.
That's why it seems like it's going to be a defensive-heavy first 5
yeah,
picks from how we're
absolutely.
looking at it. So we asked Rowan students about who they want their team to select tomorrow. Let's take a look at what they said.
Personally, I don't know who my team is going to select in the draft. I'm not like up to date on who's like currently being there, who's up in the draft here. But if anything, I think that the Eagles need to draft a quarterback for this season.
our favorite players.
Well, I'm a New York Giants fan, so we have 2 picks. So for the 6th pick, I believe
So we going to our teams
I'm going to go with. I'm going to say an edge rusher.
Wait, I'm not this
I
way.
keep hearing they're going to draft Gary. Hopefully he's an edge rusher, so I'm going to see. Hopefully we pick him. He's not bad.
Wow, yeah, definitely a big fan of the Eagles. But I think they're definitely going to have to select the position. I don't know specifically the player, but definitely the position of a backup quarterback after we lost Foles and Wentz going to be back as the main quarterback. And it's interesting to see who we're going to actually pick up as a backup quarterback next season.
I think the Jets are going to pick Quinnen Williams with the 3rd pick. We're really lacking in our perimeter defense, and he's really going to add a lot of much-needed aggression.
I'm a Giants fan, and I think they're going to go with Dwayne Haskins in the 1st round. He'll work under Eli Manning for this coming year and then take over the job the year following.
My favorite team is the New England Patriots, and I think they're going to be taking T.J. Hawkinson because they need to replace Rob Gronkowski.
So my favorite team is the Giants, and I really think that they're going to take a quarterback, probably Dwayne Haskins, but if Kyler Murray falls, I'd love for them to take Kyler Murray.
My favorite team is Patriots, and they're probably going to take a tight end to replace Gronkowski.
And our 2nd pick of the 1st round, I'm also going to go with. We're going to have to draft the quarterback because Eli Manning is getting old, of course. We already know that. So I'm going to go with either Haskins, if he's not already drafted, or Jones. I know people were talking about that, and like prospects are saying that they might draft him for that. So we'll see. We'll see.
Welcome back to the draft. Our panel today consists of a bunch of different fandoms, so let's see who each of us think our team is going to draft first this year. So myself, I'm a Broncos fan. Jason, you're Panthers.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, you're a Cowboys fan. So we're all across the map today. I guess I'll start off because I would love nothing more than Dwayne Haskins to go to the Broncos. I'm tired of having QB problems out there in Denver, and I don't think Joe Flacco is a help at all. But I do think Joe Flacco can help Haskins take the next step. But if not, I think we should draft T.J. Hawkinson because a big tight end, he's probably one of the best tight end prospects in the last couple of years. But I'm interested to see how you guys think some of these players will help out your teams.
Yeah, well, as far as the Panthers, they have not gaping holes in a lot of places, but small holes everywhere. So there's many different ways they can go, offensive line, edge, or secondary. So I have a couple guys for each of these. I think the biggest one is if Brian Burns, edge rusher, is on there when the Panthers pick, then I think he's snap pick, run up to the podium. We'll take this guy. If not, there's like Clelin Ferrell as well as another edge rusher. But when it comes to offensive line, we don't really need tackles, but people like Jonah Williams and Cody Ford could really help on the inside, as well if all of those guys are gone for some reason. Secondary help like Byron Murphy might be really helpful for us.
Steven, question for you about the Panthers, because it seems like the last couple of years they don't really add to their offense, and you're talking about adding more to the defense, which seems to be consistently good every year. Do they maybe take one of these top wide receivers? Because there's a bunch of them in the draft. Do you see them drafting one? Or
From what I've heard, second round, they really want J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Will he be there? We don't know. But I think the defense is easier to patch up because even with our team, we can see, it seems we're able to score with Cam and McCaffrey and DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel this year with weird option plays and stuff like that. So I think patching up the defense and making sure other teams, they score low because the Panthers don't really score a lot.
yeah, that's why I was wondering about the offense. But Rebecca, the Cowboys last year, they had a bunch of ups and downs, kind of. But when you look at their defense, it seems like they're kind of ironed out there. Do you want them to add more defense? Or?
So I'm going to go along with you and say that we have some holes that we could fill. I think that we have great starters. I think what we need to focus on is backing up our starters, because you have Ezekiel Elliott, but you no longer have Rod Smith. And I liked Rod Smith. I was a big fan of him, but he wasn't doing any good. So I think we need to take a running back. We don't have a first round, so we're going to sit back for a little bit. A lot of people think we need a safety. We just signed a safety to a 1 year, so I don't think we need to go for him necessarily with our second round pick. I would maybe take a tackle, but then you have people like Antoine Woods and Malik Collins, but it's also good to back them up. People were saying take a defensive end, but we just signed DeMarcus Lawrence to a huge contract. We have Tyrone Crawford, and then you just pick up Robert Quinn, so there's no need for that. So I would go as taking a safety and a running back in the second and the third. I just don't know what order.
Is it a running back because of Elliott's injury issues? Or?
No, I think you just need to back him up because we no longer have Rod Smith, so there's really no good backup for him right now. I think Damian Harris will be a good backup if he hasn't been picked yet, because he might go high. And I think for a safety, someone like Jonathan Abrams would look good for us. But, that's up in the air, too. There's a lot of safeties on this draft.
Yeah, that would make the most sense. It seems like all of us, all of our favorite teams, they kind of have just holes all over the place. And it seems like just the one person might end up helping out the whole team.
Yeah, of course.
So now, Jason, I'm going to talk to you now because you're my big statistics guy. When we covered football, you got all the statistics going. So let's break down some of the top quarterbacks in the draft this year, because there's like a big, maybe 3 to 5 QBs that at one point we're all projected to go in the first round. So who are you looking at as top guys this year?
My top guy is Dwayne Haskins. I think he's the safest pick. He's destined to be sort of that Alex Smith above average, but maybe never great, although, with the NFL, who knows? We were talking about before, 50 touchdowns and only 8 interceptions, 70% completion percentage. That looks good to anyone that likes football,
and
or even
our
casual
great
fan.
graphic by my co-producer Billy Rake here. 4,800 passing yards, 50 touchdowns. It was against an easier schedule. It seems Ohio State has an easier schedule every year, but I think he has the arm and the talent that if he has 1 year off from being a starter, maybe, that he might end up being really good.
I think the important thing is a lot of people think he's going to go to the Giants, and Giants fans will tell you themselves they're going to play Eli Manning whether they like it or not, because that's just because how management feels about him. And having Dwayne Haskins behind him for a year, I think would be phenomenal for them, because as poor as Eli's played the past couple of years, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and he can teach Dwayne things that'll help him succeed in the league.
And I think he wants to play for the Giants too, because he knows that Eli is on his way out. So I think the Giants would probably be a good fit for him, even though personally I mentioned I want him to be in Denver because I see his talent in those numbers. But then next guy up, Kyler Murray. He's going to be the guy everybody talks about because most of the mock drafts have him going number 1. But I know you and I personally were not sure if he is going to go number 1. How do you see him fitting into the league?
Well, with Kyler Murray, he has a low floor and a very high ceiling. So he can either be trash or he could be amazing. It really depends on what team he goes to and how they sort of deal with his style of play. He's very small but mobile. If he goes to the Cardinals, they don't really have offensive line help, and I think the same thing's going to happen that happened with Josh Rosen. He's going to underperform. But if he goes to a team where he has people in front of him, like he did at Oklahoma, he's going to have the time he needs to drop back because he is small, to see the field, and he has the accuracy and the arm to get it where it needs to go, as well as he can run around a little bit. So it really depends where he goes.
I think, unfortunately, because of his talent and because of his stats, those teams aren't really going to look at that offensive line part of it. So he might end up going to somebody like the Cardinals and then struggling and maybe not take that next step that he probably can, because he's a very similar player to Baker Mayfield, and I was not very high on him last year, in all honesty, and he surprised me this season. So, but finally, on my list, I have Drew Lock. What do you think about Drew Lock?
Drew Lock is definitely the third best quarterback in the draft. I think Daniel Jones is going to go ahead of him, but we're on Drew Lock right now. He had a good season. It's just that he's not as good as Dwayne Haskins or as Kyler Murray could be. It's just underwhelming, like, everywhere.
Yeah, you think it's probably in his clutchness, right? For lack of a better way of describing it, because he did underperform in the bowl game he was in. And I feel like with Locke, he has a similar arm strength to Haskins, but it's a question of if he can transition into the NFL, which is why I think it's surprising that he's first round projected still.
I just think a lot of teams need quarterbacks, and there's sort of a drought this year, and Drew Lock and Daniel Jones and players like those are serviceable, and depending on where they go, who knows what can happen. Drew Lock, a little bit better than Daniel Jones just because arm, accuracy, everything. Just a twinge better. I think they're similar. Drew Lock is just average is how I describe him.
All right, thanks a lot, Jason. So we'll see how these quarterbacks end up going in the draft. Jacob Keppen is standing by to help us break down the top wide receivers in this year's draft. So Jacob, come on over here. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you very much for the introduction.
I know you're excited for the draft this year
very
because
much.
you showed me your big Excel sheet the other day. You got projections and everything. But I want to specifically break down wide receivers with you because it seems just like quarterbacks, a bunch of wide receivers are leaking into the first round also. So who are some of the guys you want to talk about today?
So I actually really like this receiver class. I remember people kind of soured on it at the beginning, but there's a lot of guys that like in this class. But there are 4 guys that I see that are above the rest. 4 guys that I give it like a first round grade. My 4th one would be Marquise Hollywood Brown out of Oklahoma. He's a guy that has tremendous speed, which is valued at a premium in the NFL today. Very productive at Oklahoma. He's a guy that is going to work perfectly as your second receiver on the outside that is going to be able to take the top off the defense, help guys work underneath, and really just big play threat, He's got really good speed and good hands to go with that. That's something that's very important for deep threats. I think he's going to be a very good receiver in the NFL.
And you see Marquise Brown's stats here, 75 catches, 1,300 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. Do you think that's because he was working with Kyler Murray in a strong arm all season? Do you think he should go to a team with a strong arm quarterback?
I think so, yeah. I think he can be very good, especially for like a younger quarterback with a big arm. So think of like your Josh Allen as such, someone who's going to be able to chuck it deep. And Marquise Brown has the speed, has the ball tracking ability, and can really help bail out a quarterback in that way. That might not be the most accurate.
Yeah. He would probably work really well in Buffalo too.
Yeah,
now that you're bringing that up, because of the fact they love to spread the field up there. So I'm excited to see if they end up taking him. But DK Metcalf, #1 ranked receiver, and for good reason too. You see his stats there: 569 receiving yards, a 4.33, 40 at the combine. Where do you see him going?
I see him definitely as a first-round guy. For me, he's a top 10 player. He's a dude that is the perfect combination of size at 6'3", and speed, obviously 4.3 at the combine. He's a dude that has very rare talent at the receiver position where he's going to be able to beat guys deep and also going to be able to beat guys with his physicality. He's the kind of guy that another guy that could work very well with Buffalo, where Josh Allen could throw it deep to him, and either he's going to beat the cornerback deep, or even if he's covered by a safety or in the corner, he's still a guy that can go up and get it. He's got very long arms, very thick frame. He's a dude that might not have had the production as much as college as other guys. He had some injuries, worked in a really, stacked offense, but he's a dude that I think is going to absolutely tear it up in the NFL.
Now, although the last couple of years these wide receiver rankings have kind of put receivers a little higher than they probably should have been, do you think Metcalf is one of the guys that will kind of break that trend? Is he NFL ready now?
Yeah, I think he's probably not the most NFL-ready receiver in this class, but he's a dude that should be a starter day one, and the potential is through the roof. We're looking at a dude who could be a Calvin Johnson type of player with, generational impact at the wide receiver position.
And then one more guy to cover, N'Keal Harry from Arizona State, is looking at his highlight reel, making the opener actually, and he can make some big plays. You see 73 catches last season. Where do you see him fitting in the NFL?
He's a guy that I think is the most safest receiver in this class. He's a guy that has good athleticism. Look at him right here. He's an absolute tank. He's built very well. He's a contested catch freak. He's a guy that you toss it up and he's going to come down with it. Very strong hands at the catch point. And not only that, when the ball is at his hands, he's not just a guy that can catch the ball. You know, he's a guy that is like a running back at the wide receiver position. You know, can make guys miss, can kind of barrel over guys. Really, he's a complete receiver. He reminds me a lot of Dez Bryant in that way.
So lots of shifty receivers and lots of guys that seem NFL ready this year. It should be exciting to see where all these receivers go in the draft. So thanks so much for joining us today, Jacob. Do the Rowan students think any of these wide receivers are going #1 to the Cardinals? Let's find out.
I think it's going to be Kyler Murray. He is by far the best looking prospect out of the top 10, top 15. And I feel like he could be an immediate contributor to the Cardinals. He could be I think close to top 10 quarterback in the league upon coming in.
I think the Cardinals are going to pick Kyler Murray. He's just a strong, really young quarterback with a lot of upside.
The Cardinals, I definitely don't think they love Josh Rosen, so I think they're going to take Kyler Murray, but if they decide to stick with Rosen, I think they're going to go with Joey Bosa.
I think that Kyler Murray is going to be going #1 to the Cardinals because they botched the Josh Rosen draft last year, so hopefully they get it right this year.
I think, as most people think, Kyler Murray is going to go first to the Cardinals.
Oh, that is hard. That is hard because there's a lot of like prospects that are saying, "Oh, it might be Murray. Oh, it might be someone else."
I think that first overall pick is going to be Kyler Murray, and he's going to go to the Cardinals, who obviously have the first overall pick.
I say Nick Bosa.
Now, unfortunately, we live in the Philadelphia area, which means we have to break down who the Eagles should be targeting this year. Kayla, what are the Birds looking at in the draft?
I mean, unfortunately, it looks like they're looking at offensive tackle. Not unfortunately, I should say, because obviously it is a great draft for linemen and everything. I want them to take a linebacker, though. They have one good linebacker, Nigel Bradham, and I think they really need that if they want to succeed. You know, I understand the injuries. Jason Peters is getting older. You need somebody to back him up. Brandon Brooks might not be back. You need a defensive end just in case Chris Long doesn't come back. But I would like to see them take a linebacker in the first round. I don't think it's going to happen, though.
And they lost Hicks this
Yeah,
offseason,
exactly.
too, right? Okay, that's what I thought. But talking about the offensive tackle, it was Jason Peters. Wasn't he injured last season?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought. And he's getting up there in age, too. So he is a solid guy. But who do you see them taking at the offensive tackle position?
I think Yanni Kajusti from West Virginia. He's quick and athletic. He does not have the best hands, but he's very quick. He's very athletic, and I think he could look up to Jason Peters in a way. And I think this might be Jason Peters' last season. I mean, he's constantly going and going, but he could be somebody to get in Jason Peters' spot.
So it probably is the year to draft a guy like this to kind of be taught by Peters. And it seems they definitely want to get somebody before he retires because you don't want to be worried about them coming in a whole fresh offensive line too.
No, definitely not.
So that's always a concern in the NFL. But linebacker-wise, since that's who you want them to take, what are you looking for there?
Gary Johnson from University of Texas. He's probably my favorite linebacker in the draft. He led Texas in tackles last season. I think you just need somebody with Nigel Bradham. Like you said, we lost Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks also didn't have his best season last season, so it was understanding that they got rid of him because of the money and everything. But I think Gary Johnson would be a great fit to this team.
So after linebacker, your pre-show notes you gave me, you have defensive end, and then you also have defensive tackle and wide receiver. So you've covered it all. So it seems like where the Eagles are positioned in the draft, they can honestly take anything.
Yeah.
So
I think.
Can you break these guys down for me? How do you think they fit into the Eagles?
Defensive tackle, I would like over the defensive end. Jerry Tillery from Notre Dame, he wasn't the best player coming into college, but he improved a lot. And he had 8 sacks last season. And I think that being said, the Eagles right now have a lot of veterans on the team. They don't have a lot of young guys. So I think bringing him in, he's young. He's not super experienced, obviously, but him being able to look up to those vets and like kind of be behind them, and then when some of them leave the following season, come in there and be like, okay, this is my show now. Another thing I'm seeing too, though, is running back Josh Jacobs from Alabama. A lot of people want to take him, and he's great. And if he's still there in the first round, I understand what people are saying. I just don't think that's the spot we need most.
Yeah, I completely understand. And it seems like for the Eagles that after the disappointment of last season, it seems that this is kind of a transition year. As much as I'm sure you would love to say, we're going back to the Super Bowl and we're winning it all, it seems like this might be the year they draft some guys and kind of coax them through this season. And maybe next year they'll be back on track.
I mean, though, Howie Roseman did bring back a lot of vets. He brought back Vinny Curry, Deshaun Jackson. So that makes me think a little bit. Maybe he's not pursuing the future right now. Maybe he's just pursuing this season. I do still think it's important, obviously, to have those younger guys to fill in, say, after Jason Peters is done, when Deshaun Jackson is up. But it was actually surprising how Harry Roseman did all of these trades and everything, because he did bring back a lot of veterans. So
Do you think he's bringing in the veterans and people like Deshaun Jackson to kind of bring back that Philly spirit to the team?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think bringing back Deshaun Jackson is huge, especially because now Carson Wentz is your quarterback. We got rid of Nick Foles. Carson Wentz doesn't have him in his back corner anymore. And Deshaun Jackson, honestly, ever since he left, we've been missing him. We had Torrey Smith, who was a speed receiver, but Deshaun Jackson is one of the best in running the field like he does. So.
And one last quick question. You mentioned losing out on Nick Foles. Is there a backup quarterback drafted in any of the 7 rounds, or are they going to sign someone?
I think they just might sign someone. I think Nate Sudfeld is actually a really good backup quarterback. He's not a Nick Foles, but Nick Foles shouldn't be a backup. So I don't really see them drafting, maybe a lot later if it's possible, but I just don't see it.
All right, so that's the Eagles preview for this draft.
Yep.
We're going to bring Jason and Rebecca back on. Everyone wants to know who the next fantasy football diamond in the rough is. So who do you guys see in this draft class that could be that next fantasy championship player?
DK.
DK, really?
Absolutely.
Well, we were talking about DK earlier. What team do you see him going to? Where do you think he would fit in?
We talked about it earlier. If he was going to go high in the draft, I think he'd be so cool in Green Bay. It's not going to happen. I think Jason and I were discussing how cool it would be to see him there.
Yeah.
I think he'll go a little later in the end of the first. I'm trying to think of teams that need receivers. The Bills could always use one, but I don't think they'll go for him.
I have Pittsburgh taking him.
That's a good one because you lose out on Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
So he'd be a good fit there, but you have to give the people you have a chance, like Juju Smith-Schuster. He's going to do really good this year.
I mean, my guy's T.J. Hawkinson. No matter where he goes, and he's probably going to go to some place like Jacksonville. Oh, if he goes to Jacksonville, he has a good quarterback behind him. But if he goes to some place like Denver, like you were talking about earlier, Derek, whoever they have, he'll be one of the main targets because he's just that good of a receiver. He's going to be the next Rob Gronkowski, Greg Olsen, because he's just that efficient. He can block. He'll always catch in the open field, and he has a really good chance at catching it even when he's decently covered. And with he's not as fast as his teammate from college, Noah Fant, who's also going to be high in this draft, but he's definitely a way better receiver, and he might just be the best receiver in the draft when it comes to hands and stuff like that.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what you were saying, since you stole my player, I was going to say T.J. Hawkinson for exactly the same thing. It seems like it's been a couple years since there was a tight end that was this high on the draft board with Rob Gronkowski potential. So, and I also agree that if he went to the Jaguars, he would really help out Nick Foles and that offense, especially since some of the wide receivers are a little iffy and injury prone. But I also really want him to go to Denver because I think Joe Flacco loves tight ends. So that would be a really great option for him.
I think if he goes to the Jags, I mean, obviously Joe Flacco would be good too. I agree with you guys that he's going to have a lot of yards being a tight end because if he's backed up by Joe Flacco or Nick Foles, he's going to get those passes. He's going to be that star tight end. So I definitely think that he would be high up there.
We talk about running backs, like Josh Jacobs. He's going to be up there, definitely, depending on where he goes. But
in this,
absolutely,
class.
And running backs is something we haven't really touched on this show so far. Are there a couple of running backs you see being fantasy options maybe?
So I see Josh Jacobs, definitely. I think all of you agree. And then I see Damian Harris if he's not a backup. So if he's starting. But for instance, if he went somewhere like Dallas, he's going to be a backup. But if someone takes him earlier and sees something in him, he's going to be a starter, and I think he'll be a good fantasy option.
And then just rounding out my top fantasy options, even though I'm not too high on him, I got to put Kyler Murray on here. Because just based off of what team he goes to, he could end up coming out and having similar numbers to Baker Mayfield last year. And I just don't see how that's a bad thing for the NFL also.
It's just about where those quarterbacks go and where they start, because obviously the guys who are going to start are going to be the fantasy contenders. Like you have Dwayne Haskins up there too, and you have someone like Drew Lock. But let's say Drew Lock goes to the Broncos. Joe Flacco's going to start, most likely for a little bit at least. So he's not going to be the fantasy contender yet.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hit or miss with quarterbacks when you're trying to decide fantasy contenders. But I'm definitely going to say Kyler Murray, and then I would go Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, last year it seemed like it was only quarterbacks just for all the fantasy contenders, but this year it seems like it's a big question mark at that position. So before we end up wrapping up the show with our last segment, I just want to say that it's never too early for Super Bowl predictions. So I do want to say thank you to everybody that came out to do interviews for our packages. We really appreciate it. And it's also cool to see the Rowan students' opinions on everything. So now I'm going to ask you guys, what's your Super Bowl matchup? And who ends up winning it all this year? I know it's early, but this is what makes it fun.
It's really early. I mean, I have some people that I think are going to go in the playoffs and do well, and then who might get to the Super Bowl. Kayla and I talked about it. The Chiefs are up there,
Definitely.
obviously.
Come back here.
I don't think the Rams
After.
will be up there because they had a lot of people signed to 1 year, so I don't think they're going to get back up there. I think the Browns are a really good contender. The problem is everyone is coming from different places, so they need to work on building themselves up before they become definite Super Bowl contenders. I think they'll get into the playoffs, and I think they're going to make it far. Obviously, I think the Patriots are going to get in there. When don't they get in there?
Yeah.
I said I'd like to see the Chargers up there. I just want to see Philip Rivers win one, but I'm going to say definitely the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think I want the Chiefs to win it all, to be honest with you. Well, obviously, I want the Eagles to win it all, but coming from an NFL standpoint, I want the Chiefs to win it all. I think that the quarterback position going up against Tom Brady, you know, it's hard. Tom Brady is such a veteran quarterback, but I think he's had a year under his belt. So I think that Mahomes can really get up there and do it, go for it all. And I also think, like you were saying, the Cleveland Browns, I think they might win it in a few years. This is the first year their team is fully together. They have great talent, but I just don't think they'll win it all this year. They'll definitely get to the playoffs, I believe, and be a contender, but I just don't think they're going to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more bold in my prediction. I do think the Chiefs are going to go to the Super Bowl, and I think they're going to win. But I think who they'll be playing is maybe risky, but I think the Chicago Bears. They have
That's a good pick.
they have
I like
didn't even
the
think of
best defense in the league.
I
They
like
have
that a
the
lot.
second best defensive player.
There's a
in
chance it
Khalil
only
Mack.
gets better, too.
Yeah. Pretty much everyone on their team and on their defense specifically, you'll hear their name and you'll be like, that's a starting caliber player, but also a quality starter caliber player. And as well, Mitch Trubisky, while he may not be the best quarterback in the world, he gets the job done. We've seen that before, and they would have most likely moved on in the playoffs. Wasn't for Cody Parkey last year with the doink doink, but I think their second go around they're going to have a much better shot and they're going to go to the Super Bowl, but ultimately lose to the Chiefs. Although with that defense, they may be one of the only teams that has the ability to stop them.
Yeah, it could end up being a lot closer than people think. But for me, I think the Rams are going to go back. I think they're going to learn from their mistakes this year. And then also, they really need to iron out that defense because they have the talent for that defense to be better than they were last year.
Yeah.
But, and it pains me to say it, but I think the Chiefs are going to make it to the Super Bowl. And I can't stand them, but that offense is just too good. I think it's going to be a shootout, but I think the Rams will ultimately learn from last year and be victorious. I love my guy Jared Goff, so I gotta go.
Tiny hands, though. He can't throw.
It doesn't matter. He wins games.
Yeah, because of Sean
Maybe not the
McVay.
Super Bowl, but
Yeah.
I mean, it was the
Sean McVay.
Patriots.
When it got tough
so.
early behind you,
Yeah.
you know?
All right, well, that was a lot of fun, guys. I'm sure we'll all be camping out on our TVs tomorrow,
Absolutely.
waiting to see who goes where, and it seems like it's a really big question mark over this entire draft, so everything we just talked about could be completely wrong come tomorrow.
Can you imagine? I'm going to hold my
Tyler doesn't
predictions
get
up
picked
next
in
to
the
the
first
screen
round
tomorrow.
now.
Yeah, but we'll see. That's all the time we have on the draft this year. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we were able to provide some insight for everyone at home before the picks start coming in this weekend. For Jason Pini, Rebecca Sulzbach, Kayla Santiago, Jacob Keppen, and the rest of the crew of the draft this year, I'm Derek Hill. Thanks for watching,